Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table A Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says. Hello and welcome to another episode of Surveyor Says. This is Tim Birch, and today, I know I say it every week, this is a very special guest. This is another very, very special guest. We've had some ongoing conversations with the California Land Surveyors Association for several years, and it's finally here. We finally agreed on an MOU, and California is coming in as a 100% membership state. So with me today is their current president, Warren Smith, and actually Warren and I have been going back and forth on a couple of things, and it's not just even the MOU, it's the monumentation preservation or monumentation reestablishment with wildfires, and we'll get into a few of these things. Warren, thank you for joining me today, and I'm thrilled to death that we've been able to meet in person and be able to do this.
Well, thank you, Tim. Yeah, it is a pleasure to finally meet in person.
Yeah,
and not Zoom.
Not Zoom, because we've seen each other on several Zoom meetings that across a couple of chapter meetings, and so it is always great to put a real face with a real voice with a real person. And so, tell us a little bit about your background besides being the current California president. What do you do? What's your daily life?
Well, I am a county surveyor, so a lot of it reviews maps that are submitted for approval and dealing with landowners' issues, and all, of course, the public holdings in the county that I'm county surveyor in.
Sure. So how long have you been a county surveyor? How long have you been a surveyor?
Yeah. Well, I was licensed in 1980 here in California. I began in the mid-'70s, back in the manual drafting days. And was in the private sector for 15 years and became a city surveyor in Southern California, was that for 22 years.
Oh, wow.
And now I've been a county surveyor at that level for the last 9.
Okay. So what's the day-to-day responsibilities of a county surveyor? Here, and I guess you're in the. Are you in the Bay Area? Where are you at?
Actually, we're in the Sierra foothills.
Okay.
Part of our county encompasses Yosemite National Park, and a lot of it is national forest.
Okay.
But the remaining lands, it has to do with research by local surveyors providing that, and landowners themselves.
Okay. Well, and it just sounds like it's a terrible, terrible place where you live.
It is. Yeah. Well, at this point in my career, it really suits my pace.
Very good, Very good. Well, like we said, president of CLSA. How did you get involved with CLSA?
Well, it was not immediately after I became licensed. Several years after that, when I started setting monuments with my tags in the ground and signing maps, and I realized I need to network. I need to expand my exposure to other like-minded surveyors and get help with any survey organization with common issues.
Well, very good.
Yeah, so that was in 1986, and since then, as with most organizations, it's at the chapter level, the basic building blocks that an awful lot of the local application of survey issues gets taken care of. And then you have the parent organization that collects all that activity and identifies issues and collaboratively tackles those issues. So now, beginning July 1st, California will now collaborate on a national level.
And honestly, we're thrilled. We really are thrilled. I guess it's interesting, some of the discussions we've had that, California is a geographically pretty good sized state. 20 chapters?
20 chapters.
Oh, because my background was, my career was in Illinois with 10 chapters, so I can't imagine what it's like herding in 20 chapters at a state level.
Yeah, well, the geography is diverse. Today we're in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I think we have 5 chapters probably within sight of this facility.
Really? Okay.
And just up and down the state, there are that many diverse local issues.
Okay.
So 20 is an appropriate number.
Okay, very good. Well, and you talk about the diversity of California. That's one thing that I've noticed from various states. It goes from a lot of metropolitan areas to quite often a lot of rural areas, that there is a different mentality when it comes to surveying in these different areas.
An approach, it's the research. Here in California we have ranchos, which were exempt from the public land survey system. Up in the foothills we have mining claims, and that's another thing to be concerned about. North of the Bay Area we have 2 major rivers converge in the delta, and those were exempt from federal disposition. They were swamp and overflow lands, which were dispensed by the state.
Okay. Well, I guess throughout your career and what positions you've held, one of the themes that we always try to talk about is the advancement of the profession. So I guess from your perspective, where surveying is at now with the technology, mentoring. I mean, we're gradually going from the 3, 4, 5-man crews to the 2-man crew, now the 1-man crew, and a lot of the places you've been and worked. Can we keep this up? I mean, we still desperately need that mentoring.
We do, and one of the things that NSPS brings to the table is the Young Surveyors Network.
Yes.
This is the newer generation, newly licensed in LSITs studying. And one of the things that is their goal, and I remember back when I was that age, is to expose to us older folk and the exposure to how it was that not just in our time, but our predecessors were working with less modern equipment.
Right.
And the goal of all retracements is to follow in those footsteps. So any gathering we have that shows how hands-on, how that was done, and compare it to the precision we have today, needs to merge those two into a proper retracement philosophy.
Right.
So that's a great group that NSPS has put together and is pretty active in California already.
Well, and a name I've heard, I think transplant from Nevada is Sarah Walker.
Very true.
She's a past Surveyor Says guest and just a dynamo. So a little shout out to Sarah out there for her involvement, getting engaged right away once she moved to California recently.
Oh yes, yeah. Just a week ago, we had a camp out with probably a dozen young surveyors on the Mount Diablo initial point. This is the initial point for most of Northern California and all of Nevada.
Okay.
And a behind-the-scenes tour and some hands-on work with chains and surveyors' compasses and transits put on by the Historical Society. So that was a great learning experience and hands-on.
Did it get chilly overnight?
A bit, but not. This is June.
This is June. Okay. Well, this is my first visit to the San Francisco area, so it does get a little chilly here for me for June.
Around the bay it does, but that's inland a bit, and
Okay.
It's surrounded by valleys, so there's enough heat to keep it normal.
So, what other things are going on at CLSA that during your presidency that really has your attention and things that you want to see dealt with and accomplished while you're president?
Yeah, one of my platforms is survey monument preservation, and not just the ones that are getting paved over by local agencies, but in the aftermath of disasters. Here, mostly it's wildfires, but could be floods, could be hurricane, tornadoes, whatever it is when FEMA and the insurance companies come in, that steps be taken to not make the cure worse than the cause, and that is the equipment that comes in to rebuild and remove toxic material, not disturb or destroy existing survey monuments.
Right.
So there's a program that one of our local surveyors, Mike Corderoli, is propounding that has particularly building officials, but local agencies that are regulating the reconstruction effort have on their checklist not just right of entry for damaged tree removal and the grading efforts, but that surveyors identify and reset as necessary that monumentation so that the rebuilding is done within the limits of people's property ownership.
Sure. Well, tell us a little bit about when they go in to clear some of these areas. I mean, I didn't realize, not thinking about it, after a fire, the toxic material. I mean, all of this building material and such, it's all sitting on top. It's got to go somewhere before it can be basically rehabbed.
Right, and no one other than the specially trained crews with their equipment, hazmat suits and the like, are actually allowed on site. So FEMA has that down, and the idea is to expand on that to subsequent to the sites being declared safe to visit is to have that reconstruction. The impetus, I know, for Mike's efforts began in the town of Paradise during the Camp Fire a few years ago, where it essentially got wiped out, and the rebuilding effort turned out to have unforeseen consequences where the overhead power lines were determined to go underground, and those trenching machines took out miles worth of right-of-way monuments that define property corners.
Okay.
So one of the lessons learned from that is to have checklists upon reconstruction and make sure that doesn't happen.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's one thing that we've talked about at the national level in this monumentation preservation effort. It's not like we can gather a group of surveyors from across the country and just come in and start basically carpet bombing and locating all these things. I mean, it's still California. It's still a state-specific survey activity to do this work.
Well, it is, and yet there are federal interests, such as National Forest and the
true,
like,
yes.
that have plans and a lot of funding and authorization to do fire prevention, fire breaks and the like with the urban interface. So that's the point where an inventory pre-construction would want to take place.
Sure.
To inventory, and some of these section corners and the like, boundary corners, have not been seen since they were set 100, 120 years ago.
Goodness. Okay.
So that's the idea, is to get pre-existing database of these monuments, get them tied out and flagged up so the equipment that does this clearing does not take them out.
Very good. Very good.
Or they can be reset if they happen to be.
Well, where do you think we're at in the process now? I mean, what needs to be the next step to fully implement this program? I mean, we need to get something going.
Yeah, what we found in our Zoom meetings with staff for congressmen is that the authorizing legislation is one thing, and the funding, but it's in the enactment by the Department of Agriculture, the National Forest Service, the actual agencies that contract out, that they have procedures in place to hire local surveyors, quality-based, qualification-based, of course, and then have that as part of their budget. It's far more efficient, time-wise and money-wise, to have it tied out in advance and prevent them from being disturbed or destroyed, rather than to bring it in later. It's much like the difference between a lost and an obliterated corner.
Right.
You either have nearby evidence, or you have to bring it in from a mile from four directions, and it won't quite be in the same place. So it's just an unforced error, and the idea is to work with the agencies that perform and contract this out to tighten up those regulations.
I guess ultimately, who's going to oversee that survey operation? Is this going to fall back to a county surveyor? Is this?
In most cases, it does. We have a pilot program in my county, Tuolumne County, with the Stanislaus National Forest, and the first several versions of their fire breaks have been next to subdivisions. And as part of that contracting, those property corners are identified, flagged up, and essentially inventoried so that as the brushing crew comes in, they stay on the federal side and not onto private property.
Okay.
So that's been a bit of a success story.
Okay.
I'd like to replicate that.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear, because obviously these types of situations with these forest fires are not going to go away. These wildfires are not going to go away. I mean, we'll try to mitigate as much as we can to try to reduce those opportunities, but it's I shouldn't say it's human nature, but it's going to happen.
Oh yeah, and so these are we want to make good on the success stories and not repeat missed opportunities.
Exactly. Well, I guess the other part of that, I mean, okay, so it would be overseen by the county surveyor. In this day and age, when it's so hard to get a surveyor to come out to do anything, to engage, because everybody's so busy, is that going to be another hurdle that's going to be out there for this operation, is to find consultants to do this work?
It is, and that's part of the planning, is to have a list of qualification-based surveyors, companies that are part of the contracting end of things. Okay. So the front end planning makes up for a lot of that.
Okay, well, very good. What do you think it's going to take to really get this? I mean, do we need to continue our outreach, continue our pressing of both our state and federal legislators to make sure that this program continues to move forward?
It does. It's going to take persistence and reaching out to our associated colleagues, professional colleagues. We have the Building Officials Association. We have obviously engineers and the design and planners for these projects to be aware of it. The reconstruction is going to take place. The fire break prevention is going to take place. But give surveyors a seat at the table. It's a great investment for a small part of the overall budget to do things right.
Okay.
So it will take persistence.
Well, now the teams that are coming in to help do that surveying under the direction of the county surveyor, is there any kind of coordination with, say, like the county recorder to have access to records at their fingertips?
Well, that's the research part. And the county surveyor acts more of a expediter, facilitator, rather than contract administrator.
Sure.
But he or she does need to be aware of the implications of not doing so. It's just not a good idea to not do anything.
Sure. Because I would hate for this whole process to get tied up in red tape, just trying to get recorded documents, and somebody wanting to, because obviously the recorder's offices are there for public information, but with this many documents, it'd be a significant expenditure.
Well, at least in California, county surveyor's function is to keep a geographic database, and long before GIS, and to provide that research to anyone doing boundary retracements. So in design projects, that's just part of the function we provide.
Okay, well, very good. I would like to switch gears just a little bit here, and something you and I talked about a little bit off record or earlier, was our change to a dynamic datum with the NSRS several years down the line with NGS. I think the rest of the country, we kind of get it. We understand tectonic plates, whatever. You live in California. You got things moving all the time. So can you kind of touch on how important a dynamic datum is going to be for not just California, but for the rest of us?
Well, it is because it's a relative motion. You and I are currently sitting on the Pacific Plate, but 15 miles away is, across the San Andreas Fault, the Pacific Plate. which happens to be moving relative to us about 2.5 centimeters a year, northwesterly. So that's active. And an awful lot of the developed land in Southern California is on that Pacific plate. Okay. So that's been studied for some time now, and now it's being adopted into the national datum update.
Okay. So obviously you see value in adopting this dynamic datum, because it's, like you said, everything's relative. All the static monuments that are placed throughout an area, if they're okay within themselves, but when the whole plate is moving, there's obviously some geographical considerations that need to be taken.
Right. Well, that's the fourth dimension. You have the XYZ values, and then you now have the time value, timestamp value, if you will, so that positions on the different plates have a constant that can be applied. Pretty much like, if I remember the acronym NTRF, that does estimate,
right,
based on observations, what that relative movement is.
Exactly.
So this is just an adoption to reflect the fact that we can now measure these things as well as we can.
Exactly. Well, and I guess that's one thing. A little shout out to our good friend Dave Doyle, who constantly harps metadata. That's what it's about, and I guess it's nice to hear a true everyday application of a place where that is important, and those shifts are important.
Yeah, and continual.
So what else is going on at CLSA that we need to know about?
Yeah, well, we just finished up, of course, our Western Regional Conference, which we got to co-host with 4 other states in the Western Federation of Professional Surveyors. So after a couple-year absence of not having in-house or in-person meetings, this was a great relief. I think we had something like 800 surveyors in attendance.
Yeah, that was a great attendance.
Throughout.
Yes.
And one thing I want to bring up that NSPS provides is what's known as a final point monument. Just recently, we had a chance for a person to actually set his own final point, Steve Parrish, and I was able to be there for that ceremony. And it's a bit unusual that he was able to do it, and during the ceremony, hear accolades from all the people he's mentored over the years, and not let it go unpassed. He got to correct a lot of the anecdotes.
Which is good. That's good.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing but praise for not just the ceremony itself, but for the whole concept of, yes, being able to have a celebration with that person rather than a eulogy.
Right. Yeah, it was a celebration of life that he got to participate in.
That's fantastic. And you know what? And ever since this is really kind of came to light that this ceremony was going to happen, yes, you don't want to kind of question your own mortality sometimes, but to be able to have that and to be around the people that you've enjoyed for years, that you've mentored, that have been all these influences. I'm so glad that you all had an opportunity to do that.
Oh, yes. And another thing NSPS is great at is publicizing National Surveyors Week. Got a chance for our local county to have our supervisors adopt a resolution honoring the local survey community, and had a chance for about a dozen of them to be present, be recognized, and get a nice group photo shot so that their efforts do not go unnoticed.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I think so often when we think about National Surveyors Week, we think about true national recognition. Did we get anything from the president? Did we get anything from our governors or our federal representatives? But the fact you did it at your local level, and the local surveyors could partake in this and have others embrace the profession that we all love so well, kudos to you for doing that, because I think that's another angle, another element that a lot of us haven't thought of, and we're definitely going to use that back in Frederick to promote it at like you did at the local level to where you were truly appreciated.
Right. Well, that's what builds a local community, and they take great pride in it. They are following in their predecessors' footsteps and doing a great job of it.
Well, that is fantastic. I mean, yes, that's the whole point of National Surveyors Week, is to take that time to really appreciate each other in this great profession. But yeah, a little bit of public recognition never hurts at all.
And in this case, we had from land surveyors in training through current employers to retired county surveyors in this case. So it really ran the gamut of how each generation takes over for the previous. So that was a bit of a prime example of mentoring in one ceremony.
You got it. Well, and I like the fact that it wasn't just the retired surveyors, your contemporaries. You're bringing in technicians, you're bringing in SITs, and that the entire gamut of the profession was able to enjoy this moment.
That's right. That's the next generation. And with the technology, it may not take as many of us as it did before, but they still need to use the basics, follow the footsteps of us older, slower, less efficient folks. But we did the best with the equipment we had, and so did our predecessors.
You bet. So what's on the radar for California and CLSA? Anything that you're really looking at going forward for the future?
Yeah, and as far as the future goes, I didn't really have the Young Surveyors Network on my radar, but spending time with them last week was very energizing. It's just I happen to remember being that age and not having the opportunity they did to be exposed in such a short amount of time to the techniques that some things you can learn in school and online, but the real hands-on and being at a place that has a view of several hundred miles each direction is pretty awesome.
Well, that would be really, really neat to see. So, well, I got to tell you, Warren, it's been great to get to know you and to meet up. And any last parting shots for this week?
Well, just I really want to thank all the people of the California Land Surveyors Association from the chapter level, the committee level, that put in as a volunteer organization the hard work it takes to elevate and keep our profession going forward. So it's a big step for us to join with NSPS, and looking forward to continuing and sharing resources is a large part of what that's about.
Exactly, and I do have to piggyback on that a little bit, because the chapters that invited me for a lot of their virtual meetings, everybody was fantastic. A lot of great questions, a lot of voicing their concerns on what representation through NSPS truly meant, and so I can't thank, like you said, all the chapters and all the people that were involved. Rob McMillan, yourself, just everybody at the officer level that has been great to work with to put a bow on this little partnership, and we look forward to a long, healthy relationship and progress.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you. We look forward to it as well.
All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week of Surveyor Says. Please subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we do have a couple of great things coming up in the next few weeks, including the longest running CST certificate holder and some of his proteges. So we're looking forward to a conversation with them, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.